Good afternoon to some, and good evening to others, and good day to all. We just want to welcome you today to our Family-ish Table Talk series. And we're just so excited today. We've got a lot to talk about, guys. I'm just like bubbling over. I'm just excited to talk about our subject today is truth about men and women. So we are touching everyone. Yes, that means you. So today we're talking about that truth that men and women hold, and we're going to have a healthy discussion. We've got some great panelists today, both men and women representing, and we thank you guys for joining us today. And what we ask for you to do is just share this with someone. If you know somebody that may have forgotten or may not even know about this series, why don't you share it, hit your like button, just pass it along and tell those who you pass it along to share it as well, because today is going to be a day. And then if you miss it, you're welcome to go back on through our streaming platforms and to view it again. And again, guys, we thank you for coming to visit us today, and we're going to have a great time. And remember, as we go through this talk, both sections with men and women, you can choose to send us information or ask questions or say things in the chat. So join us, put something in the chat, talk to us, and we'll try our best to talk back to you guys. But we just want to say welcome. And you know what? Time is running, so we'll be right back. Hey guys. How y'all doing? Yes. It's good to see you guys. Wow. So we've got some men in the building today. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. I didn't know if I was on mute or not, man. Everybody was quiet. So we've got some great men in the building today. We want to welcome them in, and we just want to thank you guys for joining us. If you guys are with us online, make sure you can always jump in and give us a message in the chat and throw some questions at us if need be. But we're going to be talking about men and the truth about men and women. I don't know how much we know about women, guys. But we should know a lot about ourselves. So let me introduce our panelists today. So if you're looking at us, you should see 4 guys on the screen, and I'm going to introduce Mr. Fox first. We've got Dr. Curtis Fox. He's born in Trinidad and Tobago. He is an ordained minister who began his pastoral ministry in the South Caribbean Conference. He's a graduate of Southern Caribbean, and he earned a BA in theology. He also holds a Master of Science in Marriage and Family Therapy from the University of Loma Linda, and he has a PhD in Child and Family Studies from the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. He's worked as a professor and chair of the Department of Counseling and Family Sciences at Loma Linda. He did that in 1999 all the way through to 2016 before moving to Georgia. He's been a member of several professional organizations, adolescent development, clergy families, physician families, and marital relations. He is a licensed marital and family therapist in California and Georgia, and is a certified family life educator by the National Council of Family Relations. He is actively involved in family ministries and conducts seminars and workshops all around the world. Dr. Fox is the CEO and director of clinical services at TRU, that's Integrative Health and Wellness, and serves as a senior pastor of the Conyers SDA Church in Conyers, Georgia. He is married to the former Paula Jacob. Paula practices family medicine in Conyers. They have 3 children, Dana, Anthony, and Treasure. They loved home care, cooking, and entertaining, and mission service. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Fox. And we have Khalil with us, Khalil Clark. He was born and raised in Montego Bay. At the age of 17, he gave his life to the Lord, and he embarked on a service of faith. Shortly after, he made a decision to come to the United States, where he worked, where he published work, and Oakwood University shaped his life. That's what he says. In the fall of 2018, Khalil decided to enroll at at Andrews University Theological Seminary, and he was sponsored with that from the South Central Conference of SDA. So upon completing that master's in divinity, Pastor Clark, who picked up by this conference, South Central, was assigned as assistant pastor at Mount Calvary SDA in Huntsville, Alabama. Khalil's desire is to pursue his passion for creative communication of the gospel and innovative means of discipleship for God's people. He clings dear to the promise that God will complete the work he started in him. Welcome, welcome, Pastor Clark. And then last but not least, we have we call him Pastor as well, Robert Mann. He's born to Robert and Juanita Mann in Chicago, Illinois. He was raised in Memphis, Tennessee, where his father became a pastor in this conference in Alabama, Tennessee, and other states, South Central Conference. This began the first of many moves, Memphis to Decatur, Alabama, to Knoxville, Tennessee, and he finally went to Pine Forge Academy as a student. There, Robert was part of the world-renowned Pine Forge Choir, where he was blessed to sing behind gospel greats like Kirk Franklin, Yolanda Adams, Whitley Phipps, and more. And he graduated from Pine Forge in 1995, and he attended Oakwood College then, now Oakwood University. However, when street money was looking better than school, Robert decided to get out in those streets. With the feds watching and trouble on the horizon, getting in a little trouble, Robert decided to join the United States Marine Corps, which sent him to Japan, Thailand, Australia, and California. After his tour of duty, receiving an honorable discharge, Robert continued his moves through the U.S. in Dallas and Tennessee with strong prayer from his family. He had a praying family, y'all, and a pistol pointed at his head. This is in his bio. That did not go off by God's grace. Robert decided to move back to Huntsville, Alabama, and Robert has been blessed to become a published author, a book called Call of Duty. He's a founder and writer of curriculum for Man Cave, men's ministry leader, and developer of the playbook for the Blackout Mentoring Program for the First SDA Church in Huntsville, and is now a coach for the Worldwide Winning Circle Men's Ministry. He has accomplished all of this while attempting to be a loving husband and father to four, Devon, Carter, Judah, and baby Tegan. He is part of the graduating class of 2018 from Oakwood University with a bachelor's of science in psychology, and is currently pursuing to be certified in his passion as a life coach. Robert has a favorite text, Jeremiah 29:11, and he had decided to tell everyone that asked him about how his plans for his life went wrong, but were always what God needed him to do through the aid and assist, and to assist all men around him. And he is married to Kimberly Mann, who is one of our associate pastors at the Oakwood University Church. Guys, welcome. I stumbled on a little bit of those bios, but thank you for indulging me. Thank you for being here, and let's get ready to not rumble, but go to work. So, guys, we've got a little bit of ground to cover. So, again, people, if you see something, say something in the chat. Brothers, welcome. Why don't you jump in a little bit, and we can talk about what men want. Anybody, this topic, did it hit you? What did you think about when you were asked to present and be a part of this series of men? Who wants to go first?
So the question is, Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, how do you feel? Because you're thinking about this, because we're talking about men, what men, the truth about men, to be honest. And oftentimes there's a misconception about men. We're rocks, in terms of being strong. We're not soft on the inside, and there's usually misconceptions about us. So with this, guys, what are your thoughts about how men are viewed? And then we're going to jump in a little bit deeper in how black men are viewed in the U.S.
Well, I'll go first and say what my thoughts. First and foremost, hey Sharita, what's up? Pine Forge Academy, whoop whoop. I see some classmates in the house.
Yeah.
But I mean, the way that I thought about this was, oh boy, here we go. You know, what I'm saying? I'm just gonna keep it real with you. When I heard the topic, I was like, man, here we go again. Like we about to get ourselves in trouble. We about to set ourselves up on a pedestal that we can't, that we're gonna have an issue with. But then I was like, man, let's get it. Like this is the best way for us to get information. And if I don't give you what men are looking for, if we don't give you what men are looking for, then you just gonna go out there and start seeking something on your own and cause yourself to get in some trouble. So that's how I felt for real.
Okay. Brother Curtis?
I thought about the need to communicate, and we don't do that well. I think there's a lot of fear in communicating with each other, being open. And because of that, the silence actually teaches us nothing. I feel that if men are given the space to say what they want and women are willing to listen, I think a lot of good communication can happen. It goes the other way as well. And if women can feel that safety, I believe they would be open to the communication. Men would be willing to speak as well. So I thought about the silence that often happens. I think men and women may want the very same thing, but they don't get to talk about it.
Pretty big. Yeah, pretty big. We want the same thing almost, huh? Khalil, what about you, brother?
Man, look, first of all, let me say, when I knew that this was going to happen, for me, it was like excitement, because it was like, all right, I'm about to get married. This is my chance to learn from the more experienced brethren. If all these brothers who come here tonight have something to say, I have questions to ask, man. So I'm excited for that. Okay. And I think also, importantly, I think stereotypes, that's my thing tonight. Like, what are some of the stereotypes we have about men? I'm from Jamaica. There are certain stereotypes about Jamaican men. Since I've been in America, certain stereotypes about, like you say, black men. Yes. And how can we debunk those stereotypes,
Awesome. And, for our viewers who are watching, we've got these brothers who are educated, highly educated, and they are coming from different walks of life. If you listen to their bios, each one of these brothers are coming from a different walk of life. And in this space and time, God has seen fit to put us right here this evening. And so you're going to get like a rainbow of ideas tonight. So guys, as you listen, we've got a brother who's got a men's ministry, Robert, Curtis, who is our marriage and family therapist, and then Khalil, a esteemed pastor in our conference. And who is about to get married. So, you're going to get like a wide range of information tonight. So those myths, guys, let's talk about the man myth. Like men aren't supposed to cry. Men aren't supposed to be soft. What do you guys think about that in terms of can men cry?
I highly recommend it.
Yes. On several occasions, yes.
On several occasions. Okay. Somebody who said I recommend it?
I said, I have a friend who wrote a book. I think he called it The Strength of Male Tears. And I think I like it. I must have recommended the book even in writing. I think that they grew us up differently to women. And I think that's one of the greatest problems that men face. So we come to life and relationships with a veneer of toughness because they told us from the very beginning of life. And if you haven't checked, women were given dolls and teapots and, houses, and the little girls were talking very early in life to people, to family, loving people, cherishing, nurturing relationships. Men were given guns and cars. Go outside, go and relate to your friends via automatic weapons, and don't come back in here crying because big boys don't cry. And I think that channeling that happen very early in life seep down into relationships later on. So men feel that they don't have the freedom to be vulnerable, and the veneer of toughness, that invulnerability, a mask that we wear, actually create the greater problems for us and becomes the greatest source of our vulnerability, actually.
All right, Brother Fox, I appreciate that. And you know what? We're gonna pause right there, because when we come back, we're going to talk about that vulnerability that you discussed and that you just mentioned. We're going to discuss that in more detail. But first, we're going to drop to a quick commercial break and come right back, guys. Stay with us.
I'm in debt. I have 2 car payments, 4 years into a 30-year mortgage, balances on a couple credit cards, plus college for 3 kids on the horizon. 0 savings. I work long hours at a job that I hate, and despite all that, all I get is stress about how I can make more money. I take 4 pills at night for my back pain. Some days, getting up seems like too much. I struggle with dyslexia, I have high cholesterol, I overeat a little too often. I'm trying to get in shape, but it's never, I mean never enough. My dad died 5 years ago from cancer. I should have seen him more before he passed. Man, I miss him so much. Everyone expects me to be over it, but it's something that I still deal with daily. I haven't taken my wife on a date in 4 months. I practically forgot our anniversary. My kids need me when I get home, but it's late. I want to sleep. I spend my weekends at their functions, as if that's enough. All this, and I still resent my family, because I have no time just for me! I can be amazingly selfish. I'm often angry, seemingly for no reason. I struggle with lustful thoughts, none of which my wife understands. Nor do I, for that matter. I'm good at some things, I'm great at nothing. I had dreams for my work and my family, and I abandoned them long ago. I think I'm a realist, and I come off as a pessimist. I feel restless knowing something is missing. I have too many burdens. They're suffocating. And this is the weight I carry.
Hey, we're back. We're back. And that's to open up that vulnerability. That guy, it's like he had a self-awareness moment, and that commercial is really real for a lot of us. Some of you who are watching, you can feel that. So guys, just like what Curtis kind of, kicked off a little bit about being vulnerable. How tough is that? Robert, how tough is that, being vulnerable?
Well, it used to be tough for me. I don't have a problem with it anymore. I think I just like to say that I own the rights to my own story. So therefore, if I own the rights, I don't want nobody else telling it. But being vulnerable, coming from a place like Dr. Fox said, was we were raised to shut up. We were raised to suck it up. We were raised to keep it in. If we bumped our head and we start crying, we got snatched up off the floor and told to suck it up, keep on running. When the girls got bumped up across the head, everybody ran to their attention. If a baby girl drops a balloon, the gangster in the room would dive to the floor to pick up the balloon. But when a dude drops a balloon, we look at him like, "Why did you do that?" So we're taught to be hard. We're taught to keep our stuff in. So vulnerability for a man is real tough, especially when we've tried in the past and we've gotten burnt. And what I mean by that is a lot of men have tried to be vulnerable, but then they get their information and then it's just spread out. It's told to this person, it's told to that person, and then we're made to feel like we're less of men because we've been told, because we tell our business, or quote unquote tell our business. But being vulnerable is so freeing if you can get there in your life, because who has something on you? I mean, the vulnerability of my testimony is what the Bible tells me to give so that others can overcome. So if I'm not vulnerable about my testimony, then how can others overcome? My testimony was not for me. My history, my story was not for me. It was for someone else that's going through or that's about to go through something that I could, that I could help go through, or that I can help relate to, so that I can walk along with them. The empathy that we look for in men and looking for human beings, that's what vulnerability is. And if I don't share my story, then how can I help anybody come along? Like Khalil said, he's about to be married.
Yes.
Well, there's things that I can give him, and then there's things that I also can walk with him with. But then there's things that I'm also going to look. We are going to also look to someone else, because just because I've been married for the amount of time that I have doesn't mean that I've experienced something else that someone is going through. But I need to hear what Malcolm and what Curtis have gone through in a relationship, so that I can better my relationship. Those tools, so that we can better Khalil. Khalil can tell us stuff that he has, and so that we can maybe that haven't looked at it from a perspective. So that's what I think vulnerability is all about. If we're going to help each other, then we have to be vulnerable at some point.
Yes, yes,
Right.
yes. That's awesome. Any brothers? Anything?
I was gonna say, man, is there a switch that you can just? I mean, you brothers have the experience. What's the switch you turn to make yourself to be able to cry,
Yeah.
you know, and be vulnerable in front of people? Because I find that, you know, transparency for me, that's easier. When I'm up there, I'm preaching. If I'm talking to someone, I want to relate to them. I can easily be transparent, share some stuff about my life, what I've gone through. But then there's that extra piece that's that vulnerability where it really gets to that deeper place. And I think I'm still learning that, man. I'm still learning that. Because some of us were raised tough, and then some of us were raised really tough. And it's almost like when you were that kid and you went to your parent for that bid for intimacy, and you're rejected for doing that, then your entire life becomes about rejecting any form of intimacy. In fact, it almost feels strange. So how does one even begin to tap into that next level? Like you say, Rob, like you've been through the stage of not being able to be vulnerable, and now you've kind of cracked that code. Was there a switch you turn? Like how do you go about that? And that kind of shows the level of difficulty I find that vulnerability is for men, because it almost feels like cracking that code. Like, how do you do that? Yeah.
Well, I mean, just to go and I'll let you ask me. Well, it's not a switch. Well, it's not a switch. To me, it was just a simple part of it. Was a place in life where God called me, and the thing is, like, you have to hear my complete story to understand. God called me to witness and to help men. So if I'm knowing what men go through, knowing, like you said, the I can tell you a little bit about my story, but to be wide open with you so that I'm vulnerable, like that's a scary place. And that's the first thing that I had to start working on for myself. And that literally was me working it in the mirror. That was me crying and making sure, or me looking in the mirror and being vulnerable with myself, because some of the stuff that I was hiding from I was trying to hide from myself from. So just being able to just be vulnerable and open, like I call it a hot boy, honest, open, and transparent. I just being honest and open and transparent with myself gave me the opportunity to start being vulnerable. Gave me the opportunity to start just living free. And my vulnerability came out where when I was around people and the things that I've gone through, I start realizing I can't do this by myself. So my vulnerability had to be, I've got to show you that, well, quote, unquote, as a Superman, show you that I'm on some type of lower level than what everybody else is saying that I'm supposed to be on, so that we can work together.
Yeah,
I like that. The more I need you, Khalil, the more I would fear what you think about me.
Right.
And the more invulnerable I would want to appear to you. But if I don't need your definition for my survival, and I really don't, then I would be freer with you when I'm around you to be who I really am. So it is the fear of revealing who I really am that is this invulnerability thing. And if we could give that up, when we recognize that I am precious and I am special only because and simply because I am who I am.
Yeah.
When that comes home to me in my life, then the other people around me, though they're important, don't really get to define who I really am. That definition comes from a higher source that is real and constant and is not dependent on the masses of people around me.
So here's the thing about, so you mentioned fear. So, and I think the tension I deal with here is, you know, is this an irrational fear that I need to let go of, right? On the one side, or is this a fear that is very much real and it very much might result in some form of emotional lack of safety, right? There's something negative on the other end of opening up that way. And it's just about learning to deal with the possibility of that, you know, these two choices. And so I guess I'm asking, how do you view that? Would you say that the fear is irrational? Okay, so we don't need to have this fear of that. Or would you say, okay, it is possible that you might be let down that way. It is possible that your vulnerability might lead to something that might cause you even more pain. But here's where you allow that to be okay.
So the thing that I look at it is everybody that one, you don't have to be vulnerable to everyone. That's first and foremost. The second thing is, how do you know who you can trust if you don't put yourself out there? So what I'm saying is like we're talking about females and men, right? So when you trying to holler at somebody, right? Or all of us are married, but when we were trying to holler at people, we had to put ourselves out there on the block and with the potential of her saying, nah, cuz I don't want you like that.
Yeah.
But because it was something that we wanted to express, it was at that moment that we had to get it off our chest. We sat there and we had to take the step. And we were okay with the fact that she might say no. Like, I'm good enough, I'm cocky enough to believe, I hate to say this, but I'm cocky enough to believe she's gonna say yeah. However, there's still the option out there that she'll say no. But what outweighed, you know what I'm saying? Like, did that need or that want outweigh the fact that she could say no more? Because if it did, then we wouldn't be married, you wouldn't be about to be engaged. And if we were so scared, but we still shot out what they call shoot, we shot our shot regardless. And because we did that, every one of us have experienced, what we've gone through. And I believe that as men, all of us have experienced the no from a female as well. You know what I'm saying? So it's at the same point where sometimes you just have to put yourself out there to take that shot and be okay with the fact that somebody may take your vulnerability and run with it, if you understand what I'm saying.
I think that's the season of life where I am. I'm trying to step over into that fully.
Okay. Yeah. I got you.
Well, I think with Khalil, and a lady even asked a question in the chat, how do we teach our boys to be vulnerable or about vulnerability? And I think we're speaking to the men's point of view without adding history to how we're raised, our worldview, and then not only that, our self worldview, as far as, how do you handle these things as they come up? Because when it comes to being vulnerable, if you think about when you were a child, and then as a teenager, and then as a man, there were some stepping stones that even put Khalil where he is now. So you almost, and Dr. Fox knows what I'm talking about. In psychoanalytics, you go back to the past to understand where your present is. And oftentimes we have to understand those building blocks that have put us where we are, in terms of, Robert talked about how he learned to be free in his vulnerability. And Khalil, it sounds like what you're saying is, how does that even all work?
How do you crack the code?
Yeah, how do you crack that code? So it's almost like there's not one key that fits every lock, right? But there's a master key, of course, guys, because we're all theologically driven. We know God is that master key. But each individual, like, it's even tough to answer that one woman's question about how do you teach my son or a boy to be vulnerable. But Dr. Fox, maybe there's something you might want to weigh in on the psychoanalytic or even the clinical portion.
Well, just as I was saying earlier, that we tend to allow girls to be vulnerable. We imply that, man, and not boys. I think we could avoid that when kids are young. That I don't want my son to think that he is some invulnerable person. I want him to understand and appreciate his vulnerability very early in life. I want him to see that with me and in me as well. I want him to come to self-definition that is not determined by these expectations that other people have of men, because I think they are unreal and they don't work for our health and well-being. It is the way we thought we should have communicated to young boys, but I think that is passé, and I don't want to go there. And so what would I do? Yes, I would want to teach my son, as I teach my daughters, to be vulnerable around other people, and to be okay with that, because the other people are not essentially defining who they really are. Yes, you got to be mindful of the consequences of this. So with all the propriety with which one can do it, I think it's a better state if, for example, a man goes into a marriage, let's say, and he is invulnerable and he thinks he has all these expectations he must meet, he would live with a lot of pressure, like the guy in the commercial. And so he can never be healthy with that state when everybody expects him to do well, to perform, to be able to take care of everything. We are not superhumans, and they're certainly not superheroes.
And, you know, and there's a huge dynamic even in this square circle that we have with these four men. Even Khalil, when we talk about your history of being Jamaican, right? And then in America, there's a different view of vulnerability, even based on that subset, right? So, you know, the code that has to be cracked for you is almost like a Rubik's Cube, where you're trying to get each color in one, you know, on one side. So, you know, for us, when we couldn't crack the Rubik's cube, we would break it up, right? And then snap it back together. So honestly, like in your case, and even in some of the persons or people's case who are listening to us, you almost have to break apart whatever you have going on and piece that thing back together, of course, with God's help, to begin to understand even what direction you need to come from. Because if we just kind of narrow the scope, because we can be all night on vulnerability with men, and especially the Black man, because like what Dr. Fox said, there's a lot of pressure on us from being raised as young men, but then even our skin is seen as a weapon in the United States. So then there's another area of vulnerability, right? But when we talk about marriage, we'll go there, Khalil, because you're about to get married. You have a person who is supposed to be your friend first, you know, and inside of that friendship, you got love and commitment and all these things that you're building. But that's the person who you should feel most comfortable with being vulnerable. But oftentimes, that's the person where we shy away from being that vulnerable to, because they know, you know, how to get through that armor. You know, I don't know if you brothers, you know, can weigh in, and I know Khalil is listening. If you've been there, you know, where you don't want to like shed that armor, because then she'll know how to hurt you when the argument is on. I see you nodding, Robert. You know.
Yeah. Not that I'm testifying about Pastor Mann or anything like that. But no, I mean, you're right. Like the place where we're supposed to be the least worried about being vulnerable, it ends up being the place where we're scared to be vulnerable the most. And it's because of the hurt that we've experienced prior to the vulnerability or the need of vulnerability. One sidebar is I wanted to say that we need to practice safe spaces for our young men. That was one of the answers that I wanted to bring out to the young lady. Practice safe places for them to open up. And if it not be all the time, then just have a time during a certain day or certain hours or whatever that they can just open up and express themselves. And then getting them into the habit of expressing themselves. To me, getting them into the habit of expressing themselves gives them the opportunity to just want to come to you because you're a safe person. But being vulnerable in a marriage is scary because, like you said, that thing can be used against you at the wrong time. You know what I'm saying? You're vulnerable about something you're going through, and then the next thing you know, y'all are arguing, and then you know she come back and be like, "That's why you," and then it's all over with then. You know what I'm saying? But but at the same time, you're right, Khalil. Everyone, this is the place where we should be the most vulnerable is in our relationship. I mean, like Adam and Eve were naked; they were vulnerable to each other. And that they were in a relationship. That was the first relationship, and that was the model of what relationships should have looked like to us. So being naked doesn't mean taking all your clothes off, but it simply means that everything that about you should be free and able to express in your marriage and to that best friend, so that you all can work together. Because a part of vulnerability is also the process of moving with each other. You know, vulnerable is, hey, I need some help, and the other part of vulnerability is being able to say, can you walk with me? And we walk together. So that's what I believe it is to me. I mean, that's me.
And think about it, vulnerability is what I might call intimacy, right? It is essentially intimacy. But I might say, and I should teach that intimacy is not something I give to somebody or my wife. Intimacy is a way I am, because I am not so needy or dependent on her evaluation of me. I can be free to express myself around her. I am free to be known by her. I am okay with that. And the extent to which I do not want to be known by her is the extent to which I would hide myself from her. So this vulnerability thing is a real thing in marriage. And if you don't get that straight, then it is very difficult to be intimate. It is essentially the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you know, what you guys are saying is so powerful. And for some of the people who are listening, you know, oftentimes you don't know where to go. And in some churches, you've got men's groups. In some other areas, you know, you choose to be in a bikers club. You know, even some people join the military, or they get into a fraternity because, or even a gang, you know, because we're looking for that male camaraderie where we learn a type of vulnerability, but then we learn a type of existence. So maybe we can kind of share that a little bit too with the listening audience, those single mothers who are dealing with young men, and those young men who are kind of in that headspace of trying to figure themselves out. You know, what do I attach myself to even begin to understand how this thing works? Because especially for our young men who grew up in a single family home where mom had to be the man and the woman and hold that down. And we didn't have either an uncle or somebody in our life that could really like be that anchor. How do we navigate with that, guys? Any thoughts?
I like the idea of that safe places, man. I really think that's a really great idea. I think, you know, if I'm going to keep it all the way real, man, yes, I'm getting married in a few days. In about a week, I'll be married. And I think that, you know, it was so interesting that one of the first things that I felt like the Holy Spirit was impressing me to do as soon as I get married is to sign up for one of those, you know, those groups where they have where you can pay to be a part of it. And it's like a men's accountability thing. And I'm like, man, I'm so messed up that I know for sure if I don't get into something, like, I'm going to be in trouble. And so I think those places where men can express themselves, I think that's something that's a really great idea. I like that.
Yes.
Yes. And you know, Khalil, and for you, man, you're in an interesting place because you're where we were in the past in terms of about to get married. And I mean, for some reason, we're coming back to this. So I mean, the Lord has us coming back to this because somebody's listening who needs this. So we have a misconception, and I'm going to just speak in general terms. You know, we as men have a misconception as to what marriage is supposed to be and what marriage is supposed to be for us, right? And I don't know if Curtis and Robert had this misconception, but for me, you know, when I got married, I'm like, look, I got a wife. That means sex is going to be biblically based. So that means I can have it whenever I want it, as much as I want it. You know, it's almost like a vending machine. I'm being serious because we're marrying young, and then the woman that I'm marrying will not change because I'm marrying a concept. You know, like the woman that you just proposed to, Khalil, and you're marrying next week, that's an ideal that you have, right? But each man in this square who's been married for a while understands that their wife has changed over time. And this is not a bad thing. It's just that's the progress of human nature. But for us, you know, like she's going to stay the same. Then I've got this sex thing. And then she's going to listen to every word I say, right? That's some of us, right? So there's this, I don't want to call it a misconception, but it is a misconception when we're jumping into marriage. And I don't know if Brother Curtis and Brother Robert have, you know, any misconceptions they had when they were about to get married. But, you know, it takes being married to begin to understand, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be. This is what I'm supposed to do.
Let me ask a question real quick before you answer, Brother Curtis. When you give that answer, also please tell me, what was it like when you came to the realization that, okay, this was a misconception? How did you transition from that to a place of health?
Good question, Khalil.
No, I cannot answer the question. One book that I gave my students to read is called The Passionate Marriage. The first chapter of the book is entitled "Nobody's Ready for Marriage." Marriage makes you ready for marriage. And David Snatch went to town with that. I like it. Nobody's ready for marriage. Marriage makes you ready for marriage. And I would rather say, Malcolm's marriage doesn't make me ready for marriage. My marriage makes me ready for my marriage. Because I do not know what I would face in my marriage. And as I face experiences day after day with my wife, the more I recognize that being together is a mysterious thing. The Bible says this is a great mystery, but I speak concerning Christ and the church in Ephesians chapter 5. And maybe it is a continuing revelation of strength and weaknesses and challenges, good times and bad, that you experience every day. And so in that experience, we are learning more and more how to be married, how to forgive, how to be forgiven, how to grow together, how to deal with change. My wife, well, let me tell you what I say to people sometimes. The woman you are married to is not the same woman to whom you got married like 20 years ago, because people change. There is an evolution. When somebody gets a job, a new job, now they're the manager, they change, right? Right. Just that's the nature of life. People change all the time. You have no children. Oh, you're a different spouse. When you have children, you change. The situation changes. If somebody gets sick, the situation changes. As you go older and things are not, looking up as you would or pointing up as you would like, things change. So there are all kinds of changes that happen in the course of life, and the success in marriage, in my head, is adapting to those changes and those realities and so on. So that's how I like to talk about it. So as you go on from day to day, you are being better prepared for a marriage. It is a continuing experience, hopefully, of growing together and learning to be more intense in your connection with each other. Some people think that's going bad. I think it's going better. For good marriage, like wine, gets better.
You got 30 seconds, Rob. Go ahead.
All right. So, Khalil, you're a poet, right? So when I first met you, you're a poet. So I'm going to put a story in your head and I'll put something in there. As far as to answer your question, the only way that I understood how to get ready for the change or to get ready for that process, like I love boxing. And so when I practice boxing, when I practice karate, I gotta duck, I gotta tuck my head, and I gotta get ready for the blow. The blow may not come, but I'm prepared for the blow because I'm protected. You know what I'm saying? And the only thing that can protect you is you and God. There's no other protection for the change, because if you look for any outside protection, it's going to hit you and it's going to knock you out. So I mean, it's just so to tuck, get ready to protect yourself and and let God protect you, because like we said, everybody changes. Every season of life changes. Marriage without children, married with children, married with grown children, married with children that don't want to listen to what you're saying that need to be said, children, married with families, married with work, married as a pastor, married with pastor as with two churches. I mean, like we can go on and on and on in the process of life where things are going to change. You just have to be ready to sit there and say, okay, the change is going to come. So let me just make sure that I'm ready for when the change hits me, because the change is going to hit you. You just got to be ready for it.
Man, this is good. You're like a balloon that's about to pop. We're gonna come back to this, but it's now the ladies' turn. So y'all stay tuned. We'll be back. Well, we did. Okay.
All right. Wow. What a great conversation that the guys had. And now it's the ladies' turn. We're getting everyone in place. Hello, ladies. Welcome to Ladies' Night at the family-ish table talk. So glad to have all of you here. I am Kim Roper, and I have thoroughly enjoyed the conversation that we have heard thus far. I'm very anxious for us to weigh in and talk a little bit from the women's perspective. We have a great panel today of ladies, and I'm just going to introduce you to everyone, guys. And then also remind you to share today's live. Make sure you call your girlfriends, tell them to come join in on this conversation. We'd love to see your comments and questions in the chat. First of all, I want to introduce you to Dr. Ellen Gold Goodrich. She is an educator, speaker, counselor, and mentor. She is married to Pastor Paul Goodrich, one of the pastors of the Oakwood University Church. You may remember her also as one of the hosts of the Praise Cafe, which goes on during our worship services. She loves God and loves helping young people, especially women, discover their purpose and place in God. Welcome, Ellen Gold Goodrich. We also have Dr. Edith Frazier with us tonight. She is a graduate of University of Louisville, Boston University, and Smith School for Social Work. She has been a professor in social work at Oakwood University, Smith School for Social Work, and Alabama A&M. She has been a Fulbright Scholar to China, Thailand, and Republic of Georgia. And prior to retirement, she was chair of the social work and psychology department at Alabama A&M University, and also works with issues of grief and loss actually for the last 35 years. Dr. Frazier is a beast, and we are so privileged to have her with us today. And finally, we have this beautiful young lady, Dominique De Abreu, is a graduate of Oakwood University. She has served as a biology and chemistry teacher for Shenandoah Valley Adventist Academy and Pine Forge Academy, respectively. She currently serves as an algebra, ACT prep, and chemistry tutor for students at Westminster Christian Academy. Wow, heavyweight, all right. And is the assistant dean of Wade Hall on the campus of Oakwood University. And she happens to be engaged to a certain young man who was on the previous panel. She is the wife-to-be of none other than Khalil Clark, the associate pastor of Mount Calvary SDA Church right here in Huntsville, Alabama. Welcome, welcome to all of you ladies. I know that you are anxious to get into this conversation. But before we do, we have a little commercial break, and we'll be right back.
I am plagued by insecurity. I look around at other women, and I can't help but notice how they seem to have it all together. Even Bible study feels like a study of what I should be wearing or what I should cook for dinner. My relationships are a mess. I don't have enough time to call my friends, much less go and visit them. I snap at my kids half the time, and I'm worried about them the rest of the time. I see my husband every day, but somehow I still miss him. We're in debt up to our ears, and I'm not sure what to do about it. I mean, do I stay home with the kids? Or do I go get a job? Either way, I feel guilty. Most mornings, I look in the mirror and wonder what happened. My weight is up and down and up again, and my clothes never fit right. I work out, I try and eat right, but it's just never enough. Those perfect girls in the commercials drive me crazy. I know that it's all produced, but it still eats at me. I mean, is that what they really think I should look like? I try to push through all of these feelings. I put a smile on my face for my family, but I look forward to when my kids go to bed. See? Guilty again. Endless emotions swirl in my head like annoying little gnats. I'm tired. I need a break, and there isn't one, ever. I'm so bored with the same routine, but it's also the only thing that keeps me sane. I just feel weak, and I'm so tired of feeling weak. I read about the Proverbs woman, and it should help, but it doesn't. My past is its own burden, and the Bible says I should smile about the future. I'm terrified of it. My dreams feel so far away. Sometimes, well, most times, I can't see truth through all of the mess. And no matter what I try to do about it, it's never enough.
Yeah. How many of us can relate?
Absolutely.
Yeah. That feeling of never being enough, right? That's one I think that is quite common for us as women. Ladies, I want to just start the conversation off though, with what you think the biggest misunderstanding uh, that men have of women. What would you say that is? The biggest thing that men misunderstand about women.
I think often we almost feel in competition. You know, it's like men will say, I've done these workshops, and men will say, well, you know, I do the lawn and I do this. And she says, but I do the dishes every day. And I think this whole idea that who's pulling the most of the load is a confusing thing. And somehow there's this sense that I have heard women feel that what we do is somehow not as important. So I think that's kind of what we feel. And the final thing, I don't know if men feel this way, but there was this book written many years ago called The Second Shift, in which it said women have a job and then they come home and they have a second job. And so I don't know if there's this sense of understanding that everybody's working 40 hours. And when we come home, the home belongs to us all.
That's right. Yeah, Kim, can you ask that question again?
I was asking, what do you think the biggest misunderstanding is between men and women?
Yeah, and when I thought about this time together, and the men kind of alluded to it initially as well, I believe the biggest misconception is thinking that we all want different things, that men want things this way and women want things that way. The whole Mars and Venus thing, cats, dogs, you know, I see it as a ploy in breaking us apart. The reality is we fundamentally want the same things. We really do. Safety, trust, love, you know, reciprocate. We really want all of those things. And I think that's one of the greatest, and I think it's from the enemy. And we need to guard it and fight against that.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that really the same desires pervade in both. So one person's desire for respect and another person's desire for respect, it's, you know, the same way that you would want to be treated or spoken about or esteemed, or you know, the way that you would want to be represented. It's not, oh, well, you know, the woman, she doesn't really care. If I'm happy, she's happy. There is more of that, I do believe. But then also at the same time, just because of us maybe being more relational beings, often we're being socialized to be that way. But yeah, there's still that desire too for respect, the dignity, the, you know, the way in which communication takes place, the same things that they desire for themselves, also we can desire for ourselves as well. But like, we're not necessarily always share that narrative.
Yeah, Dr. Maya Byfield says we aren't opposite, we're complementary. We want really similar things.
We do.
But the way those things manifest is different. What we interpret as love, what we interpret as respect is different, right?
Well said.
And as Dominique said, the socialization, because the men spoke about that too, how we're raising our children, right? How we're raising our boys different to our girls is really how we see society playing itself out, you know. And go ahead, Doc.
No, I was just going to say the men spoke at length about vulnerability, and that's really what I would say. Women want men who will risk being vulnerable, who will risk being intimate, intimacy, and share who they really are.
Yeah.
But I have done workshops, and I'm going to quote someone. I did a workshop, and this man said, "Me, be vulnerable," and I'm going to directly quote what he said. With a Black woman, no way.
Right.
And so there's this sense that we can't trust each other. And that gets back to, sort of Khalil's thing about fear. Can we really be open and honest with each other? Can we trust each other?
What do we as women do to make men feel that they can't be vulnerable? What are we doing that gives them that? We say we want them to be vulnerable, but they don't feel that. They talk a lot about the safe space, right? What is it that we are doing or not doing to make them feel as though it's safe to be vulnerable?
That's a really complex question, Kim, and thought, because when you think about it, it depends on the situation, the individuals, and all of those things. If you're coming, I'll speak for myself in that it's a conscious effort, because when Goodridge is in a particular place where he might want to be vulnerable, but if I might be having a difficult day, there might be financial challenges or challenges with the children. I might not be in a space that wants to accommodate that. And I think there, in all fairness, there should be room for that too. Where it's a given, that's the type of marriage, but every moment will not provide that space you might be looking for at a particular time. I hope that made sense.
Mm-hmm. It did. And I just wanted to piggyback on that and say the other part of the complication, which we've already alluded to, is so that we enter the relationship, many men with fathers, uncles, brothers, mothers who said, big boys don't cry, toughen up, be a man up, man up, whatever that means. Right. And then they get into a relationship with us and we're saying, we want to see you to be open and honest. And they're like, okay, so which voice do I listen to? Mm-hmm. So that's a part of the complication. Yes. But I also think sometimes this is, I think, one of Kim's underlying questions, we will, so they do cry. I mean, I have actually had men say, I got teary, I cried, and she said, man up, put your big boy panties on, pants on, or whatever. And so I think if men are going to take that risk, we have to be open to accept that part of them. It's all a part of them. We all are the tears. We all are all of that.
Yeah.
Let's go back for a minute and talk about expectations. I think that came up in the last conversation also. And this may tie into why men may or may not feel as though they can be vulnerable. Because what kind of expectations, ladies, did you have of your husband? Let's just bring it home. What kind of expectations did you have for what he was going to be once you became husband and wife? Because maybe some of our responses to them has to do with how well they did or did not meet the expectation that we had.
I want to respond to that.
Thank you.
I was hoping you would. Good.
Me too.
I'm going to tell you a story first.
Okay.
It's going to be short. I had a kid like 2 years ago, and he worked with me in the lab. And I had commended this child pretty frequently about how quickly they work. And so then he kind of wasn't able to meet some of the deadlines that we had set. And instead of saying, I'm just going to need these things to be adjusted to get this paperwork in or to get this organized or to be able to finish this procedure so that I can get these results after this amount of hours or whatever. It was, not lying, but just covering up the fact that those deadlines weren't going to be able to be met with basketball or choir or whatever else he had going on. And to, I guess, maintain this image of, I'm the timely one. I work really fast. I'm very efficient. This is my priority and I excel here. There wasn't that communication of, okay, I'm going to need these deadlines to be pushed back. And so instead we just had information missing. And I think in the same way too, I think if there's expectations, you know, like for example, of goodness, kindness, strength, whatever that's expressed, but then there's not also equally expressed a grace for when there's a falling short, that really kills vulnerability. I'm not going to want to tell you something that's going to cause you to have a image contrary to what now I'm being praised for. Might as well just, you know, maintain that. So I think that's where we can do a little bit better.
You know, I think we enter marriage with expectations often based on what we've read. Or in my case, you know, my father, you know, I just thought he was like amazing. And, you know, Freud would like this. Coincidentally, my husband and father have the same birthday. So then you kind of think, you know, he's going to be this, he's going to be that. And that was, of course, fallacious. You know, my husband's Caribbean. My father was Southern. My husband is from a family of 12, and he was more in the middle. My husband was the oldest. They're totally different people. And so that is one factor that framed mine. I really thought he was going to be very similar to Dad, and he was, but he wasn't, because he is who he is.
Yeah, and for me, because again, you know, we're really coming from our own experiences. When it came to expectations in marriage, coming from my birth family, I have 7 brothers, right? And then my dad. So I have always felt very in tune with the masculine testosterone perspective, because I've lived, you know, I have been, you know, observer of this my entire life. So when it came to marriage, I entered it cautiously because I had all these examples of the type of man I could end up marrying. So it's just important I think it's important to manage our expectations, you know, especially with a decision like marriage, because thinking thinking you expect, thinking it's completely different. Many times.
I like what was said in the previous panel about marriage preparing you for marriage. That that you really can't prepare ahead of time. You have to just do the thing.
Correct.
That's terrifying.
Yes, Dominique. So, you know, just wait for it. Just wait for it. So with that said, then, those of us who are married on the panel, what were some of the expectations that you came into the marriage with, and what challenges did you meet when you actually were married then? And how did you handle that?
Oh, okay. Well, for me, so my parents were married, I don't know, I guess, you know, 40 plus years until my dad passed away, right? And I witnessed my parents sharing a closet, being in the same space the whole time, and, you know, this kind of togetherness. I married someone whose parents divorced early on and was essentially raised by a single mom. So his living perspective was totally different. So I had to make those adjustments and not take it personally as a form of rejection, because the person I married didn't want to do, you know, everything together, which was what I saw and I thought marriage was about. Of course you share a closet, you know, of course, like your toothbrushes together, you know. So you know who you're marrying, and you manage, you know, when you're in it, you learn and you navigate and make those adjustments.
Yeah, and for me it was similar. We both came from homes where our parents were married over 50 years, but in a different, but even then they managed it differently. We often, and Dominique can maybe remember this story, we talk about the fact that in my growing up, my father was the kind of person who loved tax season. He wasn't an accountant. He was a meat cutter, but he liked all that accounting stuff. I mean, had he been given the opportunity as an African-American man, he probably would have become an accountant like his son did. But he loved all of that and the bills and all. He was just excited about it. And my husband's mother did all that. So when we got married, we're talking about expectations. I kind of looked at him and thought, okay, here's the bills, dude, do it. You know, and he looked at me and was like, okay, chick, you know, and we really were.
You got it.
So those expectations came from what we've seen before. And so I think we both given what seems to be minor things, but really, you know, spirituality, how much we connect, what we share, does it mean that you have a sacred circle? What does that mean? All of these are expectations we come into the relationship with, and we're not sure how we share. And even what it means when you have children, what does it mean to be a father? What are your expectations of a father based on what? And so all of these, they just frame, and sometimes we have extremely unrealistic expectations for this person. This person that we're married to.
Yeah. I found that I learned a lot about myself after marriage. So I think marriage brings things out of you also, because it's just, you've never been in a situation as intimate as this one. And the other person really becomes a mirror for you, and you begin to sort of see yourself in a very different light. One thing that I have found to be a major difference between myself and my husband is the way we express our emotions. I am a very emotional person, and I express my emotions freely, and he does not. What that caused, though, was some misunderstanding, because I assumed then, because he didn't emote, that he didn't feel emotion. And there was some conversation in the last panel about the men feeling different emotions, and that was something that I didn't see expressed, and I assumed did not exist. And so I wonder how often that happens between men and women, that there is a disconnect, because they both have feelings, they both have emotions, but if they're not expressed in similar ways, then it's not recognized and maybe even misinterpreted, which is what happened with me. I misinterpreted, and then I would treat him a certain way because I thought, you know, he didn't feel anything, and then that created a whole set of problems. I don't know if anyone else can relate.
No, yeah, I can, because I'm also on the opposite, because of, you know, my family dynamic with growing up with all these boys, that I've always fought against the mentality of, oh, women are so emotional. They get emotional and so honestly, that's somewhat of a trigger for me in that, because you can have emotion and still be logical. And because you are emoting or sharing your emotion, that does not mean you have lost sight of whatever the situation is, or, you know, whatever is going on. So that's another area that I would definitely say, Dominique, I would love to hear your perspective on that as you're entering this, you know, in terms of, you know, men feeling that women are so emotional, and they don't have to be. They can look at things just logically.
Right. It's like it's an either or.
Yes.
Correct. As opposed to a both and.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think one thing that when you're maybe the girl growing up and you're around a lot of guys, and it's always like a lot of, you know, male energy around, then anytime that there's kind of like accountability sometimes too, then like, let's say for example, oh, like, okay, you went too far, that could hurt somebody's feelings. Oh, here you're being emotional. Or if there's any kind of you know, like a call to goodness sometimes, then it's often like kind of shut down with like, oh, here you go, you're being emotional, can't take a joke and that kind of thing. And very often, like, you know, sometimes like with that, you know, line between right and wrong, like it's really interesting dealing with, you know, people who, especially guys who have that mentality of like, oh, women are so emotional, and then dealing with men who are, you know, who don't have that mentality, and to bring something and even to be compassionate about something is welcomed. It's very refreshing and yeah, unexpected often.
I thought it was interesting though that in the panel with the men, they were bemoaning the fact that they were raised to be boys who don't cry, right? They were actually talking about how that was a negative thing, that that you know, boys are raised to be tough and all of these things. And so it's interesting to me that even though there are many men who will admit that it shouldn't be a bad thing to express emotion, I think there's still a struggle with that, and there's still an inability to know what to do with emotion, especially when it's expressed by women, the women in their life. Even if they on some level know that it should be okay, there still seems to be a stigma around expressing.
Yeah. Well, this is an example of what, you know, Ellen talked about at the beginning. We're all created by God to be emotional.
Amen.
We all have tear ducts.
Yes.
Yep.
Let's start there.
Mm-hmm.
And so God created us all to have the wide range of emotions. Mm-hmm. And so the fact that we have, unfortunately, taught our sons to repress their emotions,
Yes.
not just us, i.e. the parents, but society.
Yes.
Then that's socialization. And you know what's interesting to me, you know, I had the opportunity to spend time in Egypt and in Ghana, and men in those countries actually hold hands. They hold hands and they hug, and they're friends. I mean, you know, they have permission to do that. And I remember talking to a professor who had been in Kenya for some time, and he ran into someone from Kenya here in the States, and the guy grabbed his hands. He said, "Oh, no, you can't hold my hands. In the United States, we don't do that." And so it's not that men cannot be taught
exactly
things. It's that we are not allowing them to do that whole range. Correct. And so then they're limited. We're limiting them. And so therefore the fact that we do it, then I think sometimes it's an attempt to limit us.
Or if they're already seen as the stronger, and they're told this is not something available to us, and we're seen as the weaker, and it's something that, you know, then it's like, okay, you're socialized to be able to be that way, but now we hate it in you too because this is a weak trait.
Yeah. But even, you know, I do the grief work, and I'll be working with someone who had someone very near and dear, and they're crying, and they'll say, "I'm so sorry." No.
Yes. Yes.
So even women are supposed to cry.
That is correct. Yes.
Guilt.
Yes.
Yeah, we feel like, even as women, we feel like it's a weakness in us, right?
That's
agreed.
Yeah. So, what advice, if any, do we have for young women like Dominique as they look ahead at marriage and that intimate, lifelong relationship with the person of another sex, right? What advice can we give? I feel like one thing is to ask as many questions as possible ahead of time of what the expectations are. Are there any other things that that single women should be aware of or think about as they look to as they're dating, or even if they're looking at getting married, that you know, just heads up things that you might need to navigate with this dynamic between men and women?
Well, you know, the week, Kim, that you and your husband talked to the couples, you said marriage is hard work. And so I would say, you know, for Dominique, who's getting married in a week and a half, I think.
Or less.
All right. You know, expect to work hard. And for those who are thinking about relationships are hard work.
That's right.
With your girlfriends, the relationship.
Yes.
You just don't waltz into a relationship. Be willing to make the commitment to work hard.
No, I think that is such a valuable point, Doc, when you said every relationship, because I think there's this misconception that, you know, the marriage dynamic yes, it requires something different, but it also requires the level of commitment that we have in our family dynamics, in our female friends, our, friends of other sex, just relationships in general, require it. But when it comes to marriage, I would definitely say it's crucial to remain open, and as a believer, because that's what this space, our biblical worldview, in that making God a part of who you are, developing that relationship with God for yourself. And especially with the fact that you're marrying a minister, it's important for you to know that the expectation is that you're to have that connection. It's not a connection we get via or by the way, because you're going to need it. No matter who you're married to, you're going to need it. If that is who you look for your strength, for your connection, I implore you to develop, strengthen, cultivate, and hold on to that relationship for yourself, because you're going to need it. And for other ladies out there, because there's some women who don't want to get married. And I was at that place. I didn't see myself married. I had no plans or desire to be married. And if that is not that's fine too. You still have that same responsibility, if you are a follower of Christ, to make that your first relationship. And if you're going to use that relationship to define who you are, because that's the other thing that marriage can do. If you're not careful, you can lose who you are, because again, socialization of women, you get lost in the service, the children and everything else. And it's like, no, I used to play volleyball. I mean, I love going to shows. You still have to remember who you are and hold on to that.
Yeah, that's good. Did you have something you want to say, Dominique?
No, I was just saying, well said.
So I'm curious, this is a panel, men, women, we're talking about specifically the differences between them. And I'm looking at one of the comments. We were talking about emotions. It says, you don't want a man being so emotional that he can't navigate logically. If you are in the car and lost, we don't need both of us in tears. Okay, trying to pick a fight, but let's talk for a moment, ladies. There's a phrase that's thrown around a lot, like what it means to be a man, what it means to be a real man, right? So, what do we look for in a man? Like when we say we want, our husbands to be real men. What does that mean? Does that mean they can't ever cry or get emotional? We already talked about that. No, but what then? What is it that we expect our men to be?
For me, I think it's real important that my husband's very caring, very compassionate. And, early in our relationship, we had a little snafu about how I like romance, and he didn't think it was very important. But now that he knows that I think it's important, I get roses every 2 weeks minimum.
Yes.
That's what I like. So I think, and that's why it's no one size fits all. My mother-in-law says flowers are going to die; they're a waste of money, and I said, waste your money on me. So I that's kind of, those are just a couple of things I look for: caring, I look for compassionate, I look for someone who is romantic.
Yeah. And I define a man primarily by his commitment and intentionality. Not willing to give up, doesn't want, not going to walk away, committed to this thing, and also intentional. And it's something that I was telling Goodridge, yesterday, that I really appreciate about him, because I'm the one, I'll forget the anniversary and the holidays and so forth. But I mean, we're 22 years in, and this guy has like always made sure we did things together and set aside time. And even why I'm even here now is because this was time he set aside. So that I look at that as a real man who is stepping up to the plate. He's committed to this thing, and he's intentionally working on things that's going to build and pour into this thing and make it work. That's a real man for me.
Spiritual intimacy.
Integrity and responsibility. So, like you're already a male, but the same way that there's like certain things that make a girl a woman, for me, like what makes a boy a man. Like, integrity, responsibility. Yeah. Those are traits I'm very attracted to.
Nice. Okay, so I have one last question, and I'm going to ask it, but I think then we're going to also be joined by the men. We're going to kind of bring everyone together as we wrap up the last few minutes of the show. And my question is, I know that a huge part of our relationships has to do with how well we are at communication. How well do we let them know what it is that we need from them, what we expect of them, what we consider to be, the non-negotiables as it relates to as it comes to our relationship. And so the question that I have for you all to think about is, what do you say, or how do you make sure your spouse knows what you need? Like or maybe what challenges have you had with making sure they understand? Because I know sometimes we may assume that it's obvious, right? So how do you make sure that you are communicating your expectations to your spouse? How successful have you been at doing so?
That's a great question.
So maybe I'll let you all think about that a little bit, and give our producer a moment to segue from this to the full panel.
We're back.
We are back. Let's see. We got everybody back together. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Hey guys. So it's been a good conversation, Malcolm. What you think?
Yeah. We had a lot of fun, and I had a lot of fun listening to the ladies. And we were just being vulnerable in our group.
You guys were being very vulnerable. I was very impressed by that, actually.
I was impressed with the men. You were great.
Me too.
They jumped right in. Yeah. They jumped right in. Yeah. So the question that I had on the table, guys, was about communication and how we let our spouses know what it is we need from them and what our expectations are. Who wants to jump into that one?
Kim, will you say that one more time? Oh, go ahead, Brother Fox. You need to unmute yourself, Dr. Fox.
I have a lot of conversations with men and women. And I think the abundance of revelation that I have will allow me to say that people can communicate with one another if they recognize that the emotional envelope in which the message is delivered is perhaps as important as the message itself. I feel, quite frankly, I can be told anything, I can be asked anything, I can be critiqued on anything if it is said in a tone that allows for a measure of safety. I think I hear people say, well, it doesn't matter so long as I have to say. Well, that is not totally true. And I think it's not the best way to think about it. I really think that if I lower my voice and calm my voice,
that's so nice.
And I say to you what I think can be said, it becomes more palatable. And I feel that will unlock a lot of secret doors that couples can enter. That's my view, and I'm sticking to it.
And I agree with you. However, we know that doesn't always happen.
That's true.
So when that doesn't happen, that becomes an opportunity to come back. You know, my husband and I just did a workshop actually in which we said great connecting times is post conflict. So what happened? What made it hard for you to hear what I was saying? What did I do wrong? Or Malcolm's asked. You have to be vulnerable. I mean, we had a disagreement not long ago because even at 53 years, we still disagree. And afterwards, I was like, so what happened? I mean, I really was confused because it was like not a complicated thing. And it went all down the tube. So I'm like, so I go back and I go, so baby, what happened? And I was like, so when I said this, what did you hear? You know, so we had to deconstruct what happened. So that's a vulnerability. And when I remember saying, so in that particular interchange, I said, so you really weren't mad at me? He said, no, I was angry that I hadn't done whatever. I was like, oh, cool.
You know, the Frasers are a beautiful couple. And I am cheesing because I see the Clarks who are about to be married. So I'm calling them Clarks. It is so cute to see that newlywedness, right?
Yes.
So cute.
But my advice, this is shifting a little bit, Kim, but my advice for people like the Clarks is to hang around well-seasoned couples who have been there and done that. My wife and I had the pleasure of driving with the Frasers from Huntsville, Alabama, all the way down to Mobile.
Yes.
And we listened to those pleasant discussions that some would call arguments, right? But they were pleasant discussions. It was so cute because her husband was like, when she started driving, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need that. And all you heard from Dr. Fraser was, yes, dear. Yes, dear.
What?
and it was nice, but it wasn't a subservient yes, dear. But we learned as we hung with them how to handle ourselves, you know, with better reporting. It was just great. So I'm just kind of throwing that out there. That's a huge shift. We turned left and right down another street, but I just saw Dominique and his wife. I mean, Dominique and our soon-to-be husband. And I just thought that was just kind of just so.
Brother, I just want to say that you just got the perfect view of what it means to be prepared for marriage. If I had the chance to get a 6-hour car ride with the Frasers as they have these wonderful discussions they're talking about, I would be ready for marriage, brother. You got it. You got it.
Now, let me just tell you, that might have been that 6 hours. There are other times. The car and my driving is a major issue. So we have resolved it better, but we still,
Okay.
No, I wanted to share, kind of going back to Kim's question, and then also Dr. Curtis's response.
Yes, that was cute. That was something too.
Spoken like a pro.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to say, to Dominique and Khalil, you can have the best intentions in your communication, right? And you're sharing from your heart. And as you can see, I'm someone, I can be passionate, I can be animated, but I had to learn at times to begin to rein it in. And I would have to say, like, Ellen, fix your face, because it would interfere in the communication of whatever I'm delivering. Because we know that when we're communicating, it's not to ourselves, it's that other person's interpretation and reception of what you're sharing, even if it's from the warmest, fuzziest of places. But it's how they receive it that matters. So that means, yes, I spent a lot of time apologizing. But I just want to give you guys the heads up that, it's how it's received, not even the place where it's coming from. Because you think like, oh, like, you know, Dr. Frazier said, you have to wonder, like, what happened? How did it get to this? I promise you that will happen. And you will think back to this time.
I'll be ready.
Can I? So just to jump back, to piggyback on what you just said, I read a book called Love and Respect, and the author of it, I forgot his name, but
Eggridge.
Eggridge, yeah. He said in his podcast and in his book, he talks about blue microphones and pink headphones. So basically what it is that we can say the same exact thing that we're trying to portray, but with the way that it's coming off to the other person is brought in a different tone. You know, so we just have to be and it hurt me up until the point that I understood that for myself. And then once I understood that, literally I've had conversations with Kim that I've had to sit on my hands because I'm expressive. So this might feel like, you know what I'm saying, like something is wrong, like knock her out, but I'm not. This is just how I talk.
Yeah.
So and to give her the safe place that I've literally had to get something in my hand, where if I have something in my hand, I have the microphone, and if I don't have it in my hand, she has a microphone, and if I don't have it in my hand, I've literally had to sit on my hands so that I wouldn't give her so that I would make it a safe place for her, and I had to learn those things, and then. Even when just listening, like you said, like going back and seeing how it is given to the other person, I've had to learn a lot of that because I'm militant, like I'm military, like this is the way that I've been brought up to speak. I'm straightforward, and it's gonna be this way, and I don't mean nothing by it. I love you, but it's just the way that I say it, and it comes off as harsh, and I've had to come back and kind of soften the blow or soften the conversation so that I give the same thing that I need to give, but it's being presented or it's being taken in a way of love and compassion instead of just, you know, like dictatorship. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, one of the things that's been helpful to me is when there's an issue that's really important that I want to convey. I have to pray before I go to my, and then I have to pray that, you know, because you can see I'm very verbose, that the Lord will guide my words and help him to hear what I have to say. And then, you know, I'll, you know, he'll say this or I'll say this. Is this a good time to talk? And you have the permission to say, no, it's not a good time.
Yes.
So I'm not feeling it today. I just can't today. And so then you can find another time.
And that's important because we've been brought up to not go to bed angry or let it linger. Like what you just said, Dr. Frazier, is it a good time to speak? And today I'm not feeling it. It means, okay, well, we'll talk about it at a later time, but we're going to speak on it. But that's really important to understand. Because a lot of us, I know I was brought up to the old Christian way. Don't go to bed, you know, with the anger and all this other stuff. And it's like, man, I got to resolve this when I'm not ready. And I'm not ready, and then more things happen because I'm not ready to resolve it. So thank you for saying that, Dr. Frazier. That really helped a lot right there.
It's two things. I think it's easier to learn to fly a plane than to bring it down, and it's easier to escalate conflict than it is to de-escalate conflict.
True.
De-escalation perhaps is more important. So we could fight. In fact, that's not a predictor of relationship failure. Not fighting is more a predictor of relationship failure. But if you take it up, you should be able to bring it down. Some people are able to fly, but they go up and up, but they never could bring it down. The last thing I would say on that is, I think when two people in this communication process, at least one of them is feeling that they're not on the same team with the other person, I think that exacerbates the whole setup, and I think the interpretation of the interaction would be different if we were both to feel that we are really on the same team. So we could talk about anything, we could struggle through anything, but we are on the same team.
Yes.
Excellent point.
Awesome.
Excellent point.
Great analogy. Great analogy. Good point.
Working together as a team.
Yes. Yes.
I think that so much of what everyone has just said has to do with we're two individuals. We are two unique personalities that are coming together, and each of you will have to give some, right? In order to be in relationship, there has to be compromise and a willingness to, a give and take. Because I'm one of those people who's very passionate and expressive, and because I have to tone that down so that my husband can hear me, I have at times been challenged, like I have to be something other than myself, right? And so, but it's not that, right? You're not necessarily giving up being yourself, but you modify in order to make the relationship work. And so Dominique and Khalil, I would just, and to all of the others, singles who are watching, just understand that that's really what the work of the marriage relationship is. It's the willingness to be vulnerable, the willingness to give, and, to make sacrifices. You're not always going to get your way. It's not always going to be, in your favor per se. But I think what Pastor Fox said is so important. You're on the same team. So you're not really giving up anything. You don't have to stop being being yourself. But the goal is the success of the relationship. And so whatever it takes to make the relationship work, of course, you want to be willing to do that. And as I said, it's a give and take on both sides.
Yeah. What helped me tonight is I heard this one thing, because the title is The Truth About Men and Women. And I really heard that the ladies in your panel, that we're basically the same, and we just want to be loved, and how that love looks, can be a little unique to each one of us. But I really appreciate it to hear from women that we're basically, the same, and what we really, really want at the end of the day.
Yeah, indeed. I want to give everybody on the panel your last sort of closing thought that you want to offer as we wrap up today's panel. And my closing thought is just to share a book by the author's name is Shaunti Feldhahn. She has one called For Women Only, and she has one called For Men Only. This is an awesome book, guys. And it was so enlightening for me as a woman. And I bought the men's copy for my husband. And it did wonders for our ability to understand one another. So for those of you out there who are in relationship or wanting to understand better the opposite sex, I highly recommend For Women Only by Shaunti Feldhahn. I can put it in the comments. Okay. Any last thoughts, guys, as we close out tonight? This has been so good.
Well, I just want to say that, the men talked about the wives and the evolving, and we've alluded to that, that the person we marry is not the person who we're still married to, and to be willing to grow and evolve. And part of growing and evolving is kind of what Kim said. It could be reading that book, or it could be reading the book that Robert talked about, or it could be going to a couples retreat. Always be willing to grow.
Yeah. Love it.
I heard we want the same thing. I think that was a loud message for me because we heard it on both sides.
Yeah.
I told my students to buy all those books, Men Are from Mars and Women Are from Venus. Every copy you could possibly find, light a fire and burn them.
Right.
I think there's a lot of danger to those kinds of thinking, bipolar, gender role socialization stuff. I think when two people get together, they gotta define and redefine how they want to live, to be on that team together, to make the relationship work for them. And give up some of those external voices that give demands and pressure and expectations that have little to do with their reality. I really think we would be more flexible, adjustable if we just use our relationship as ground zero for all the great happenings that possibly can take place in their lives together. Men can talk, yes, they can. Men can do dishes and cook well. And if given the opportunity and expectation, you might find that he can. Women can change the wheels on the lawnmower and
That's
some
right.
of the other things if given the opportunity.
That's right.
And I feel like I want to teach. If I change a bulb, I show my daughter how to do it,
Mm-hmm.
show my son how to do it, yeah, etc., etc. When I cook, I ask my daughter to come to see it. I ask my son to do it because I feel that they should both, and on and on. You understand what I mean? I feel if we try to do marriage today, for example, like marriage was done 60 years ago, maybe one of those persons in the marriage might be happy. Today is a different day.
Absolutely.
We got to come to that new day if we want to have happy, joyful relationships in 2022.
Yeah, I concur.
I also concur. I think the only thing that I wanted to add on to that is that for whoever, and then with us as well, I would like to get away from saying that marriage is hard work, but it's heart work. So I just want to get into that because that when you give somebody hard work, that gives you the opportunity to say I quit. But if you want to sit there and give somebody hard work, then that means that you're going to continue to do this to keep the beat. So I like to get into that. Like marriage is not hard work, but it should be heart work. And as long as we keep that in front of us, then we continue to work on that. Like you said, reaching out for books, going to marriage counselors, not just pre-marriage counselors who get to the day, but make sure that we go back afterwards to continue to check up and get check-ins on our marriage after it's over with. Because a lot of us do that. Well, we got to fill the blocks to get married. So we get the premarital counseling, and then once we say I do, we forget that all of the stuff that we learned, and then we still need a checkup. Like we change our oil after we bought the car, and just because we change the oil and it's running smooth, don't mean that we got to stop changing the oil. We got to continue to put oil in the car and keep changing it. So just remember to keep doing that and keep working on the heart work.
Yeah.
It's not saying that it's so hard.
Like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Solid, Bobby.
Awesome. Well, we're coming to the end of this wonderful flight. The turbulence was light. Put your seatbelts on. We're about to land this plane, but we just thank you guys for joining us this evening. We had hundreds of people on with us this evening, and our suggestion to you all is to join a ministry at your church. If you're single, join your singles ministry, women's ministry, men's ministry, your marriage ministry. Just be all a part of your family life ministry at your church because it helps you to grow in the process and with like-minded people. And we thank all of our panelists who have joined us this evening. We thank you for your words of wisdom, your words of your profession, and we've all been blessed. And like we have told you guys before, seek out professional counseling and use that to your advantage because it helps you along the way. And then, of course, we all need to talk to the master counselor.
Yes.
That's Jesus Christ.
Amen.
So you never forget that. And we thank you for joining us this evening. I think we need to share the title of that book in the chat,
yes,
Dr. Roper, and
I will
in
do
the comment section that will go out to everyone. And we look forward to seeing you guys again on tomorrow morning. We do have another series that's kicking off. So those of you who are on with us online, join us again tomorrow morning. We've got the Gratitude Project, and that's going to start tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Sunday morning, and then we'll go through the week, 6:30 a.m. Monday through Friday, and then back again on Saturday at 8 a.m. So again, tomorrow morning, we're going to be dealing with what could have been. And that's day one of the Gratitude Project. So join us tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. and be fed all over again. So guys, thank you again. And our online audience, we love you and we'll be praying for you.
All right.
Thank you.